Hi, I'm Rachel, and this is my May 2026 book haul. I have 6 books to share with you this month, and they all come from the Gaithersburg Book Festival, which is a nice-sized, local-to-me book festival that takes place every May in Gaithersburg, Maryland. And I made an entire video taking you along for the ride with me to this year's book festival. So I'll link to that video down below and to the festival website if you'd like more information. If you're ever in the Maryland area, close to the DC suburbs side of things in May, mid-May, this is a great festival to go to. Anyway, I started my preparation for Gaithersburg this year by zeroing in on which authors I'd want to see at panels and which authors I'd want to buy books from to go ahead and get signed. The major way of keeping the festival going is to buy books from the presenters. So I decided on these two authors both spoke at a panel together. It's included, snippets of their conversation are included in my video. And both of these authors were on my radar. I talked about one of them in my National Jewish Book Awards video earlier this year, and then I talked about the other one in my Mock Reads Historical Fiction video earlier this year as well, for historical fiction coming out in 2026 that I'd like to read. So yeah, the first book I'll show you is Boy from the North Country by Sam Sussman. This is a book of auto-fiction, as it were. It's very lightly fictionalized nonfiction, where the main character, Evan, in his 20s, at the time, he really wants to follow up with who his father is, and he believes his father might be Bob Dylan, and he's going, in a way, on a quest to find his father, but he ends up finding his mother instead. His mother, this is like a sort of a metaphorical thing, because he knows his mother and grew up with his mother, but, you know, he didn't fully appreciate her, you know, growing up as you do. But now, as he's entering his 20s, she is entering the end of her life, and he is called up to care for her. So yes, this is based on real events, and Sam Sussman spent a lot of time in the panel talking about the nature of reality, or fiction versus nonfiction. And I went to get my book signed for him, a little nervous about what I'd say. I always have to say something awkward to authors, it feels like, when I get books signed. And I feel like I wasn't quite prepared. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to say, even though, you know, he has had a lot of literature up on, like, the Jewish Book Council and such that I've read, so I guess I could ask about that. I mean, it depends on how many people are in the line, I suppose. But his line, despite the fact that I think in the literary circles he's well regarded, like when I bought his book at Politics and Prose earlier in the day, that's our local bookstore and book fair, you know, official seller, the bookseller was gushing about how great this book is. So I was like, you know, is he going to have a long line? And the truth is that literary fiction usually doesn't have that long of lines, I guess, which is good for me because I get my books signed. So I go up to him, and after all of his philosophical talk and the panel, he basically greets me with, hey, you know, scan my QR code to, you know, follow my updates on Instagram. So, which kind of got to the point of what I wanted to ask him. I figured I'd say, hey, what are you working on next? Something like that. And by the time I had gone ahead and scanned that code, he had, you know, finished signing the book. Yeah, here it is. So it all worked out. Also, here is a bookmark from the book festival with this year's graphics on it. And the second book I got signed, and the author I saw at the same panel. This is All the World Can Hold by Jung Yun, which is more traditional historical fiction, although based maybe a little more loosely on the author's life and a cruise that she took to Bermuda shortly after 9/11, as in really right after 9/11. So it was sort of a transitional cruise in a way about when they get back, what is reality going to be like, or in this case, the various characters and a few storylines and threads she's following in this novel. I've read Jung Yun's other two novels before this one, so this is how this book got on my radar. But I was also piqued because I myself am taking a week-long cruise to Bermuda in July, at the end of July. So I figure, what the hey, I might go ahead and bring this book along with me to read along the way. So that would be pretty fun. For Jung Yun, I decided to be a little more adventurous in asking a question, so I have memories of reading her first novel and of the characters who touched me, although, you know, some of the details go out the window, so I was scrounging around. I probably should have read my review of the book first or something to, like, ask her a question about her first book, and so I do kind of awkwardly ask her that question. I think she was starting to ask me something, and then I'm like, could I just ask? And then I launch into, like, you know, would the main character of your first book, will he ever find happiness? At one point I was going to say, would he and his parents, but then I think one of his parents actually died in that book. So anyway, she does answer about that, like, yeah, she says, not a happiness that maybe you or I would, you know, think is happiness, but he finds some sort of peace, or, so I don't know. That seemed to track with what I remembered, and I think I gave her a little bit of, I don't know, authorly joy to bring up, you know, her first book. She called it The Little Book That Could. You know, it's the one that launched her professional career as a writer. So, you know, I felt kind of nice, like, to be a part of that with her, I suppose. And so, yeah, anyway, then she also signed this book and personalized it to me. So that was nice as well. And then here we have another bookmark. This one is from Politics and Prose, our local bookstore that's the official bookseller. And this was a bookmark winner from a local child artist who is on the front of this bookmark. Okay, these other four books come from my Friends of the Library used books sale, which of course means that the four of them cost a fraction of what the other two cost, but that's the name of the game. And I love going to my Friends of the Library book sale that this year it got so big that they put all the kids' books in one pavilion outside and all the adult books on another pavilion. In the past, I was able to get a coupon to the physical location of one of my Friends to the Library bookstores so that for my next purchase I might get $5 off. But lately they've been running out of these coupons, giving them to other customers before I even get there. So alas, it's still really fun. I really tend to view used book sales as a sort of scavenger hunt because I have a long list of books on my TBR and I try to stick to that list as best as I can. So here is what I found. In fact, I think the first thing I found, you know, organized in one of the cardboard boxes was a bunch of real older science fiction, like maybe, you know, mid-20th century science fiction, something like that. And I remember thinking to myself, man, if only they had some later science fiction that, you know, might be on my list. And then lo and behold, I turn my gaze to one of the cardboard boxes of newer releases, and I see this chunkster peeking out at me, which is very exciting. This is Pushing Ice by Alistair Reynolds, and this has been a long-time veteran in one of my TBR games, the BookTube Spin, where I've created a list of around 20 books, give or take. I take books off of the list as I play the game throughout the year. And this is on the science fiction, you know, quarter of that list. The point of the BookTube Spin is to make a list and then spin a wheel and then read the book that corresponds with that numeral. So anyway, what I've been saying for years as I've had Pushing Ice on that list is that they're a rockhopper crew in space and they are tasked to follow one of Jupiter's moons or Saturn's moons as it detaches from orbit and leaves the solar system. That was, I think, the understanding I got from the summary as I researched this book last several years ago. I don't know how off I am. I couldn't tell you that I'm pretty sure this is definitely taking place in space. And I'm very excited now that I have a physical copy. I'll be adding it to my other TBR game as well, my page 112 tag, where I play with my physical unread titles, so huzzah! This second book is exciting in different ways. This is Hazel Says No by Jessica Berger Gross. This is a general fiction novel. I'll summarize, I guess, from the flap. It's about Hazel Bloom's father. He gets a job at a prestigious college. She and her family relocate from hustle to bustle Brooklyn to middle of nowhere Maine. So Hazel, I think it's a little bit of a Bildungsroman. She and her 11-year-old brother spend the summer at the town pool, acclimating to their new lives. And then there's a dramatic fallout on the first day of her senior year. And it, I think, then goes into multiple perspectives of the family. But the exciting thing about this one, which I found through the Jewish Book Council and I think on other Jewish literary sites, is that this book was very recently published, as in 2025. So to find it at a used book sale, at used book sale prices, is just pretty, cool at this stage of the game. So anyway, I'm glad to have it on my physical TBR. Next, I have Love by Mayan Eitan, which I talked about a few years ago in a National Jewish Book Awards video when it was a runner-up, I believe, for some of the categories. This is fiction that's translated from the Hebrew, and she translated it herself going by the bibliographic information, so that's exciting. I remember when I researched this book, I was a little tepid because this is literary fiction and it might be a little more of the style over substance variety than I like. I like, deep character dives. I don't necessarily need to get into some sort of, writing exercises or, trying to, extrapolate solely on thematic elements, that sort of thing. But that's what I was kind of concerned this very slim novel would be about. I'm going to summarize from the flap. They call it a fever dream, about a young sex worker whose life blurs the boundaries between violence and intimacy, objectification and real love. This is Mayan Eitan's debut. It follows Libby as she goes about her work at a nameless Israeli city. It is prose crystalline as it is unflinching, bringing us into the mind of her fierce antagonist, who spins a series of fictions to tell herself and others in order to negotiate her life under the gaze of men. So, yeah, I guess I'll just keep it at that. I guess I'm somewhat more hopeful. I'm hoping that this is an actual character whose characterization will be hand in hand with any of the thematic writing and just the nods, obviously, to strong writing, which is great so long as, characters also exist, just, for my personal tastes. The final book on the list takes me out of my personal TBR. Occasionally I do go ahead and pick up something new. And this book, in fact, was put into the fiction section, although it is, in fact, nonfiction. Maybe because American audiences know a lot of David Grossman's fiction. But I found this, yes, in the fiction section. It is called The Yellow Wind. It's translated by Chaim Watzman. And I think this is a reissue. It says at the bottom, a new introduction from the author. But it might have still been pretty long ago. I think, it was translated and published in 1988, and then, a second edition came out in 1998. And this is, I believe, what we have here. And I think you might be able to infer from the cover with the Palestinian flags and the keffiyehs that this is about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And I'll read from the back. It says, Israeli novelist David Grossman's impassioned account of what he observed in the West Bank in early 1987, not only the misery of Palestinian refugees and their deep-seated hatred of Israelis, but also the cost of occupation for both occupier and occupied, is an intimate and urgent moral report on one of the great tragedies of our time. The Yellow Wind caused a sensation upon its original publication. Now, with a new introduction by the author, it is essential reading for anyone who seeks a deeper understanding of Israel today. It actually reminds me very much of another famous Israeli author on the left, Amos Oz, who visited the West Bank, I think, around the exact same time, and wrote about his experience there in a book that was also released around that time. And the major reason I am going for this book, this is a very fraught subject which has only gotten more conflict ridden, as time goes on. But I trust David Grossman. He is an Israeli voice on the left, and I've just appreciated all of his fiction and nonfiction that have read before, and that he's also talked explicitly about October 7th in recent years, and then the impending war. So, this is a subject I do want to stay up about, but I want to be able to trust my sources, and I definitely trust my source here. And I'll see if I can link to some of his writing about October 7th down below. And with that about covers it for me now. In addition, I will link to all of the Goodreads pages for these books in case you'd like more information on them. We are now at the tail end of May, and I have a lot of reading wrap-up stuff that should be coming up soon in the beginning of June, and I believe I will in fact start with my general May reading wrap-up of books I've read for myself and not for, the BookTube prize or the readathon I did last month, so stay tuned for that. And I hope you all are enjoying your reading and enjoying the weather in the DC area. We are like oscillating between colder and warmer, but we're definitely getting into the warm and the hot now, I think. We're getting closer and closer to summer and to the second half of the year. But I'll, let June go by, or most of June go by, before I confront, the mid-year book stuff. So, yeah. I do hope your reading is going well and your enjoyment of the season is going well as well. Thanks so much for watching, everyone, and I'll see you next time.